I was having an oppressively normal morning at the dawn of 2007, flicking through the banality of quotidian email traffic, when I idly clicked on a message from a friend headed, "Seen this?" The attached item turned out to be a very well-written story by Teresa Watanabe of the Los Angeles Times. It described the death in Mosul, Iraq, of a young soldier from Irvine, California, named Mark Jennings Daily, and the unusual degree of emotion that his community was undergoing as a consequence. The emotion derived from a very moving statement that the boy had left behind, stating his reasons for having become a volunteer and bravely facing the prospect that his words might have to be read posthumously. In a way, the story was almost too perfect. This handsome lad had been born on the 4th of July, was a registered Democrat and self-described agnostic, a UCLA honors graduate, and during his college days had had fairly decided reservations about the war in Iraq. I read on, naturally printed the story out, and was turning a page when I saw the following. Somewhere along the way, he changed his mind. His family says there was no epiphany. Writings by author and columnist Cristopher Hitchens on the moral case for war deeply influenced him. I don't exaggerate by much when I say that I froze. I certainly felt a very deep pang of cold dismay. Was it possible that I had helped persuade someone I'd never met to place himself in the path of an IED? I don't remember ever feeling, in every allowable sense of the word, quite so hollow. I writhed around in my chair for a bit and decided that I ought to call Ms. Watanabe, who could not have been nicer. She anticipated the question I was too tongue-tied to ask. Would the Daily family, those whose house lay wrecked, be contactable? They'd actually like to hear from you. She kindly gave me the email address and the home number. So let me introduce you to one of the most generous and decent families in the United States. In the midst of their own grief to begin with, they took the trouble to try and make me feel better. I wasn't to worry about any guilt or responsibility. Their son had signed up with his eyes wide open and had assured us that if he knew the possible outcome might be this, he would still go, rather than have the option of living to age 50 and never having served his country. Prior to his deployment, he told us he was going to try to contact you from Iraq. He had the idea of being a correspondent from the front lines through you, and wanted to get your opinion about his journalistic potential. Mark had told his father that he had 3 wishes in the event of his death. He wanted bagpipes played at the service and an Irish wake to follow it, and he wanted to be cremated, with the ashes strewn on the beach at Nesco in Oregon, the setting for his happiest memories of boyhood vacations. So it was that in August I found myself on the dunes by an especially lovely and remote stretch of the Oregon coastline. As the sun began to sink on a day that had been devoted to reminiscence and moderate drinking, we took up the tattered stars and stripes that had flown outside the family home since Mark's deployment, and walked to his favorite spot to plant it. Everyone was supposed to say something, but when John Daily took the first scoop from the urn and spread the ashes on the breeze, there was something so unutterably final in the gesture that tears seemed as natural as breathing, and I wasn't at all sure that I could go through with it. I became a trifle choked up after that, but everybody else also managed to speak, often reading poems of their own composition. And as the day ebbed in a blaze of glory over the ocean, I thought, well, here we are to perform the last honours for the warrior and hero, and there are no hysterical ululations, no shrieks for revenge, no insults hurled at the enemy, no firing into the air or bogus hysterics. Instead, an honest, brave, modest family is doing its private best. In the last analysis, it was quite clear. Mark had made up his mind that the United States was a force for good in the world, and that it had a duty to the freedom of others. I have a photograph of him standing bareheaded and contentedly smoking a cigar on a rooftop in Mosul. He doesn't look like an occupier at all. He looks like a staunch friend and defender. On the photograph is written, "We carry a new world in our hearts." May it be so then, and may death be not proud to to have taken Mark Daly, whom I never knew, but whom you now know little, and, I hope, miss.